Welcome to one more Power of Three interview series. This is your friend here, Roberto Monaco with InfluenceOlogy. 3 questions will be answered today, 3 actions that you can apply to your business, to your life, and of course, 3 resources that you can keep learning about the subject. Today, I have my friend, Mike Bosworth. Mike, how's it going?
It's going good, Roberto. And there's something I realize that I want you to teach me, and I know you won't be able to do it today.
What is it?
But I want you to be able to teach me to talk while I smile at the same time.
I love that. I love that.
Because you're the best I've ever seen at that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, my friend. I appreciate that. So let me give a little context here before I do the formal introduction. Many years ago, when I started my career in sales, I was looking for every single resource that could help me out. And I came across this book, Solution Selling. And I absolutely love this book because this book helped me how to sell using pain and pleasure. Really powerful book. How many copies, Mike, have you guys sold of this book?
I think around 300,000.
300,000. Phenomenal book. I love so much that eventually I bought this book called Customer-Centric Selling that Mike also wrote. At the time, I didn't know Mike. So years later, I'm hanging out with my friends Win Austin and Scott Austin. And then Win told me, well, I just had lunch today with my mentor. And I asked her, who's your mentor? Well, Mike Bosworth. I'm like, Mike from the book Solution Selling? She goes, yeah. I'm like, I love that guy. You got to make the connection. So months passed. I met Mike in a party in Rancho Santa Fe.
Wynn's
really
birthday
nice guy.
party.
Yeah, Wynn's birthday party.
Wynn's birthday party. Wynn knows how to throw a party.
Yeah, amazing party. Amazing
She knows
party.
how to throw a party.
Phenomenal party. And then I was like, man, I got to connect with you. So I went for coffee. You were so grateful. And eventually, Mike said, I have a book coming out. I was like, what's your book about? He goes, storytelling. I'm like, I've been preaching storytelling, story selling. He goes, my book is going to be ready the next couple of months. And then when his book actually came out, said, Roberto, let's get a coffee. And I have a copy. Here's my copy. Now, I highly, highly, highly encourage everybody in this call to get this book. Because if in this call and follow InfluenceOlogy, your business to influence people. And this book is all about that. Now, Mike, tell us, by the way, one more thing. Something that impressed me about you in your business career is that he got this book, Solution Selling, opened up a company on it. And at one point, please correct me if I'm wrong, you had 50 people promoting your company. They have their licenses. They're selling your content. Yes. And you're doing probably like $2.3 million a year. Is that correct?
Correct.
On license.
Correct.
On license alone. That is phenomenal. Phenomenal. So it's a great honor to have you here in our call today, my brother.
Well, solution selling has been very, very good to me. And the one thing that I have to confess over the years, though, Roberto, is that I kept getting the same #1 complaint about solution selling from multiple vice presidents of sales.
Okay.
And I'm not proud of the way I responded to that. So let me tell you both.
Okay.
The #1 complaint over the years was, Mike, the top 20% love it. The bottom 80% stop using it 2 weeks after the training.
Because it's too complex, or?
Well, a salesman would only stop using something if it didn't work. And what was happening is they were going out with that sales process, but they were the bottom 80% that didn't have the ability to intuitively connect. So because they didn't have that, they just went out and within 30 seconds they were into their sales process. With no connection yet, no trust, and the buyers are just putting their hands up saying, no, no, you don't know me well enough to ask me all those questions. So but we were saying over the years, they're lazy, maybe their parents didn't raise them right, maybe they didn't learn delayed gratification, but the real answer is that only 20% of people, it's not just salespeople, I think it's people in general, have the ability to intuitively meet a stranger at a PTA meeting or at a movie or at a restaurant and just establish trust and connection easily. It's a minority of people.
Yes.
And in 2008, we finally became convinced that that's the missing link. That's why the 80-20 rule is actually getting worse over the years, not better. All that effort at sales process and CRM, over 30 some years, it went from 80-20 to 87-13. It got worse. And if you think about it, because process does improve performance, there's no question. Big companies need sales process.
Yep.
But what happened is the ones who already knew how to intuitively connect first before they took out their new process, they only took it out when they were connected. They sold even more.
Yes.
The best got better.
Yes. And the other ones who knew the process but couldn't connect just start breaking even more rapport and didn't improve, or sometimes go even worse. They
lost a lot of opportunities they could have had they had the patience and the technique to learn how to connect before they took their process out.
Okay.
But once they took their process out, the buyer felt pressure. And pressure without connection is a disaster for a salesperson.
I like that. Can I take notes here? I'm going to take some notes, man. Now, how did you start in sales? You can tell our audience here. What's your background?
Well, I had the extreme good fortune of getting hired by a high technology Xerox startup right out of college.
Okay.
It's called Xerox Computer Services. And it was founded in 1969, and they hired me in 1972. But back then, think about it, Roberto, this was a central computer with pre-developed business applications for general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory, payroll, all of that stuff, plus manufacturing systems, material planning, production control, where the customers had dumb terminals, like Olivetti terminals and IBM Selectric terminals with the ball, and they do all their transactions over phone lines with our computer. And it was, we charged them for actual usage. If they didn't use the product, no charge. So in order for us to build revenue, everybody in the company was focused on making those customers successful with our product. Not just the salespeople, everybody on the phone, everybody's bonuses, the whole revenue of the company only went up when customers used it to run their business. Okay, so I'm on the help desk for the first year, earning my stripes on the red telephone. And then the next 2 years, I got to go out and install our system into the newly sold accounts. The salespeople would bring them in, and then I'd get to go out and install them. And over those next 2 years, my esteem for salespeople went down because the vast majority of those customers, the salespeople promised them things the system wouldn't do. And so the rest of us, the support people, had to reset their expectation and build trust and get them using what we could do.
Yes.
Or there was no revenue. So when they asked me to go into sales after 3 years, I didn't have a high opinion of sales, and so I said, no, I'm not interested. And they came back a week later and said, Mike, we understand your concern, but we want to take the risk off the table. So you can keep your techie salary. You don't have to take a salary cut. And try sales for 6 months, and if you don't like it, we'll give it to you in writing that you can have your old job back. So I said, okay. And I gave it a go, and in my first 5 months, I sold more than anybody in the history sold in a full year.
That's awesome. What was your secret?
That's a good question. Well, one, I am a good storyteller, and I had dozens of customers that I had already worked with over 3 years, and I'd had dozens of specific job titles, controllers, inventory managers, vice presidents of marketing or engineering, job titles. And so whatever your job title was, Roberto, I could tell you a story about the guy in the next city over who has the same job title as you, who a year ago was doing this good, and now he's doing this good.
Love that. I love that.
Same job title, same industry. Banking or insurance or manufacturing, materials manager, controller, whatever the job title. And so, because I had 3 years helping people use the product, remember Malcolm Gladwell talked about 10,000 30,000 hours for mastery?
Yeah, for mastery, yeah.
I counted up. I had 7,500 hours of absolutely knowing that system inside and out before I ever went on to the sales. The regular salespeople they hired from IBM got put through 6 weeks of product training where they had to learn how to demo each module of the product. So when they'd go out after sales training, they'd say, hey, Roberto, can I show you a demo? That's all they could do, right? And so intuitively, I knew I had to connect. I had great stories to connect with because I knew the product so well. And so I could create a vision for somebody because I knew his job better than he. Because I know the way he does it now, and I know how much better it could have been for him if he had my product. And I could tell those stories and paint those pictures. So when I started solution selling, that was my model. I was trying to codify how I could go out, you tell me your job title. Okay, you're a materials manager. Okay, your number one problem is shortages. The next one is the line stops because they're missing one part. And the third one is you have 2 bills of material, one for the engineers, one for you, and your life is hell. And if I can create a vision for you, how every Friday you can go home at 3 o'clock, see your kid's soccer game because you're caught up and you're covered, and you come in the following Monday with no disasters, because he did it 2 streets over, you're pretty interested. And then my customer would say, bring him over, Mike. And every Tuesday morning, he'd walk all my prospects through his plant, and he'd show them the old way and the new way. So that's why I sold so much. So they make me a sales trainer, right? Yeah. Then I had to figure out why. And so I was a sales trainer at Xerox, started in 1976. And then in 1983, I started solution selling. So I had thousands of hours of sales training under my belt before I started solution selling. But if you go into solution selling, the 2 primary building blocks are the 9 boxes and the paint sheet. And what that really is the world's best product training. Because now instead of teaching you to demo applications, I teach you about controllers and materials managers and payroll managers, how they do their job today. And the paint sheet gives you the artificial intelligence to do that. And the 9 boxes gives you the artificial patience to pace the questioning. But 80% of the people who got trained in that quit using it after 2 weeks. Why? Because they started going into the boxes before they had trust and a connection.
So let's talk about your new book here, which I absolutely, again, recommend this book. I think everybody in a business of influence is not should have, is a must-have. Why stories work? Because a lot of people that listen to us, they think, okay, if you go to any MBA or any business school, they don't teach storytelling. They don't, in a business context. So a lot of people discover asking, okay, why should I take my time to learn to use stories into my sales presentation or into my leadership process or communication? Why?
Well, as you know, Roberto, there is some brain science in the book. That I'm not sure we have the time to go into today, but it talks about the survival brain and the emotional brain and the human brain, the thinking brain, and how we now know that the emotional brain is much more powerful than the human brain, and the emotional brain drives all the decisions. The emotional brain decides, I trust you. The emotional brain says, I know I don't have all the facts, but I'm going to take a leap of faith. I trust this guy. I'm going to do business with him. That's an emotional decision, not a logical decision. And story opens up the emotional brain. That's why story is so powerful. Because if you think about it, anthropologists are arguing, but a conservative number is that 2-legged creatures that speak have been on this earth for 100,000 or more years. And for the vast majority of that time, everything we humans learned about friends, enemies, food, spices, culture, tradition, dancing, singing was story. Oral. Oral.
Before written.
Before written. If you look at a timeline, the written language is very small. So it's in our DNA that when we anticipate a story, and once upon a time, that phrase or a version of it, And in business, it's, can I tell you a story about another banker I worked with?
Yep.
It's still a story, but once a human being anticipates a story, their critical left brain shuts down, their open, creative right brain opens up, and the right brain is the path to the emotional brain.
Yes.
And it's an emotional decision to say, you know what, I feel okay about this guy. I feel he's real. I feel he's authentic. He's human. He's vulnerable. I trust him. And you cannot influence, really, until you get that. You know that. I know it. The American people know it.
Yeah. Love that. I love it. In your book, there's so much takeaways. I think the first 2 chapters are about brain science, which I really love it because everything that you teach is based on science. But you also talk about the 3 types of stories that every person in sales should have. And they are who am I story, who I represent story, and who I have helped story. Can you explain the concepts and why is that important for all of us, please?
Well, regardless of which of those stories, and there's many more, there's lessons learned stories and stuff, but we believe that the bottom 80% of salespeople need an inventory of stories to help them overcome their lack of natural ability to connect.
Okay.
And the stories are emotional journeys. If you go to the movies, they have 2 hours, and they start with the setting, and then they get you hooked on the character and the boy and the girl, and you like them both. And then all of a sudden, here come the complications. One thinks the other's cheating, and you know, and they start, and they look like they're going to break apart, and we're all going, oh no, oh no. And then there's the turning point where finally, you know, Sleepless in Seattle, they meet on the Empire State Building, and then a year later they have a baby. Yeah. Right? But that's an arc of a story, and no matter what the story is, whether it's a story about your company, the founder of your company, the visionary, there's got to be a human being in that story. Just like in a movie, there has to be a human being that we empathize with. We realize, and then we learn about his struggle and the things he had to overcome. Okay, and then the turning point where he decided to create the company it is today, and then today, here's our company. That story has got an arc. Okay. And the story about you as a human being. Why am I here today trying to sell you software? Well, it started off in college. I majored in marketing, then I went to work for Xerox, and Xerox taught me software, but then I tried teaching sales, and I fell on my sword, and I had these problems, and then I finally figured this out in 2008, and there's a story.
Yes. What is the difference between the who am I story and who I represent story? Let's say I'm a salesperson, and I'm going to do a presentation, a 15-minute talk. What is the difference between a who am I story and who I represent story?
I'll give you a good example. We've done a lot of work for Oracle with story leaders.
Okay.
And if I assign a brand new with the company salesperson, just hired by Oracle, to a customer that's been an Oracle customer for 10 years, he doesn't need the Oracle story.
Yes.
He wants to know the story of this guy who's now going to be my connection to Oracle. So it's situational.
Okay.
And some people, if they're really, really skeptical, they say, I don't care about your company, just show me what you can do for me. What can you do for me? Okay. Then you have to get right down to a product usage story.
Okay.
Can I tell you about somebody who has the same job title as you, who 6 months ago was 2 days from being fired? But they've got to engage. So it's a toolkit. Depending on, we want to meet the buyer at a place that they're most likely to open up and relate to. Because we don't know the story worked until we pass the torch.
Yes.
So whether I tell you a story about my career at Xerox, whether I tell you a story about my new company, Story Leaders, whether I tell you a story about a vice president of sales that I've worked with, at some point in time, I then have to say, enough about me, Roberto. Tell me about you. How'd you get to be the VP of sales here at this company? He's going to do one of two things. He's either going to freely start telling you his story, or he's
Yes.
going to fold his arms and say, why do you want to know? Now, if you get the second, your story didn't work, dude. You better go back and pull another one out, because that one didn't fly. I mean, you know, this is an interactive process.
Yes.
We're not just going out doing PowerPoint presentations. We're having conversations with people.
Yes.
We're getting vulnerable, and the trust starts building. And what we're finding more and more is that no product discussions happen until there's trust and connection.
Yes. You said a word that I believe too, that being vulnerable is very powerful. Vulnerability is power once you
Yes.
allow that. And most people, they are not conditioned to that, because they
Oh.
still have like, no, I'm the Superman, Wonder Woman, I cannot reveal, I don't want to go first, I don't want to tell first.
Exactly.
It's almost that invisible barrier. Do you find that too?
Absolutely. And one of the tools I want to leave your audience with today
Okay.
is a TED Talk
Okay.
by Dr. Brené Brown. It's Renee with a B, B-R-E-N-E, Brown. So if you go onto TED Talks
Okay.
and just type in Brené Brown vulnerability and watch her 18-minute talk on vulnerability,
Okay.
and we show that TED Talk in our Story Leaders workshops every single time.
Okay, I want to make sure I include the resources. So we talk about why story is important, the 3 types of stories, who am I story, who I represent on my company, and the stories that who have helped. We also, you call product stories, is that correct?
Right.
And then, now one of the questions that people have is this, that was a mistake that I used to commit, years ago when I started studying stories. I went online and said, okay, stories about leadership, stories about vision, stories about commitment. And I start boring people's stories all the time, right? Because I wasn't taught on how to look inside and find out my stories. So what's your advice? The third question here I have for you. What's your advice for someone who believes in storytelling to find their own stories? What's your advice?
Well, I guess the first thing I would tell them to do, since we've come up with a model, is read what great salespeople do.
Yeah, I recommend
Because
that too.
if you're willing to put in a little work, we have mapped it out step by step by step in that book on how to build your personal story, your company story, your product stories, and lessons learned story. Like, can I tell you a story about somebody else who didn't think they could afford it? Maybe it's a financial justification story.
Yes.
Or can I tell you a story about somebody else who was worried about earthquakes?
Yes.
Or termites?
Yes.
I mean, basically, what we do with our clients is we say, what are the predictable obstacles you have in your sales cycle in your company? And if you're selling software, there's predictable obstacles.
Yes.
The CFO is going to want an ROI.
Yes.
The MIT manager is going to not want to farm it out. He's going to want to build it himself.
Yes.
And so basically we help our clients come up with the major buying steps of the buyer, and what are the lessons the buyer has to learn along the way before they finally realize, this is what I want to do. I want to do business with these people. And we want to make sure we have good stories for each of those steps that are predictable steps. This is not rocket science. It's very predictable.
I love that. You have a process, the book called, I think, Story Ladder, right? You have like I love that. Absolutely.
That's the sales process.
Love that.
You know what it really is, though? It's the buying process of your customer. That's the way we try and get people to think about it. First, the customer is curious. They say, tell me more. You only got 20 seconds for that one. If they say, tell me more, now you have 2 minutes. If at that point they say, you know what, I want to take a serious look at you. Hey, you want to have lunch?
Yep.
You go to lunch. Now you got 20 minutes to tell that same story and embellish it. But it's based on how interested the buyer is.
Yes.
But again, what we really didn't get right away in the beginning of Story Leaders, and it took us a couple of years to finally realize it, is the power of story is when you say to the buyer, enough about me, tell me your story, and then they start telling you the story, and then you tend it. You say, oh, frustrated? Tell me more about that frustrated.
Yep.
And pull that story out.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you repeat it back to him. Roberto, let me see if I get you. You started off here, then you went down this path, and that was a real problem. But you saw the light 2 years ago, and you've come around, and you've rebuilt your reputation, and here you are today, you know, whatever, ready to do business. But I'm being a little facetious. And I say, do I get you? Until you say to me, Mike, you get me, I don't have you.
Yes.
Once you say to me, Mike, you get me, now we're going to teach the salespeople how to put that in writing, in an email, send it back.
Love that.
Because we work with a lot of companies that sell to committees, right? Multiple buyers. It's not a solo decision, right? So if you're one of 7 key people in a $200 million manufacturing company that's looking to buy, you know, some big system, one of you is going to get us first, get it first, and then you're going to start spreading the word. So if I can go in and talk to each of them and document their story around the future usage of my product, once I send you your story, you go, wow, they get me. You forward that to everybody else in the buying committee. Now the next guy in the buying committee says, Roberto, I want to talk to that guy. I want him to know my story in my department. And it grows that way.
Stories by nature, they're viral because they're easy to share.
They're viral.
Yeah.
And so we love Seth Godin talking about tribes. And so we talk about, you start a tribe with one person. But if that one person in that big organization believes in you and believes in that vision, then they're going to be a tribe leader, and they're going to help you recruit other people to the tribe. And they're going to forward those stories. So when you document those stories, they share those stories.
Yes. Well, now, what are 3 quick actions that our audience, they listen to us right now, they can do immediately? Well, one of them...
We've already done 2.
Yes.
The book is number 1.
All right.
And number 2 would be watch the Brené Brown 18-minute TED Talk.
Okay.
And then number 3, build your who am I story and put some vulnerability in it.
Okay.
And the model's in the book. Yeah. So read the book, watch Brené Brown, then get the book out and build your own who am I story, just like the model in the book.
Love that. Love that. Now, I want to give some resources for them to keep learning as well. As a website, what's the best website? Story Leaders or Mike?
Storyleaders.com.
Okay.
And if you want to send me an email, I'm mike@storyleaders.com.
Okay. I want to make sure to include information at the end of this video here too. Any other thoughts that you want to leave our audience here, InfluenceOlogy community? Anything else? Any message that you want to leave us?
Well, I'm very excited about next May. I'm getting the opportunity to try these Story Leaders principles on an international audience. I'm going to be a guest speaker of Harvard Business Review Poland.
Oh,
and
nice.
my wife and I are going to fly to Warsaw, Poland.
Okay.
And so I think I'm going to be convinced that connection is just important in Polish as it is in English. And I'm hoping to find somebody in Poland who will take story leaders to that country while I'm over there.
I love it. When I a couple years ago, when I went to speak in Brazil, I had all my stories ready here for the American audience. And one a big lesson for me is that when I went to Brazil, I start talking about KFC and
I know.
like, what are you talking? What's KFC? So it was a big learning. I had to
over the finish line.
Yes.
All these metaphors, these American sports metaphors, and in international audiences, they give you the deer in the head. They go. They just, awesome. I know quickly. I look at that front row and I watch the faces. I'm careful. I'm very careful with international audiences.
Awesome. Well, Mike, from my heart, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for your time and for giving so much. Again, here's the book. I'm going to put a picture of the book, The Science of Selling Through Emotional Connection, The Power of Story. This is great, great, great book. Thanks so much. I appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
You take care. Bye-bye.